All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. I'm Bo. That is Brant. Brant, we're definitely getting a little classier in this joint. They continue, Jay, especially from the Fantasy Holics, continues to give us better and better backdrops and new intros for the show. I did have to use the old one more time. I wanted to see the fat man with the flying kick come in next week. I might even tease it later on in this video, Brent. Maybe as an outro, we'll play the new intro that was created for us. But I digress. Brant, we are officially in April. That means we are officially in the NFL draft month. It's getting closer. It's time to really, bear down, knuckle up to see what your teams get here. The reaches last year, the surprise of the first round, we all know, was Michael Penix with the Falcons. It's exciting. Hopefully my team doesn't make one of those, crazy picks this year.
Hopefully you're not the surprise this year.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not a landing spot for like Jalen Milroe or somebody like that in the first round. But definitely excited to get into that, that mindset. I know you're a few years removed now, but you've been there before. So it's definitely a growing event. I did hear recently Green Bay is expecting upwards of 1 million people. I don't know if you've ever been to Green Bay, Brant. I don't know where they fit those people. It's about a town of about 100-some thousand people. 1 million people being there is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is, because if I'm not mistaken, the setup is in the stadium or around the stadium. You're going to be hanging out in somebody's front yard. You're going to have a tailgate on a tailgate in the draft on the tailgate on somebody's front yard.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen the setup. I have not been to Green Bay. That's one stadium I have not been to. We have talked about going. It just Seattle likes to play there in December and January, and me and Pops ain't about that cold weather stuff. Been
there, done that.
Yeah, this year was a push in Chicago, which happened to be beautiful. We went. Terrible game. Not very fun game to go to. Great atmosphere. Glad we knocked Soldier Field off. But yeah, we're not a big fan of the cold, so hopefully maybe earlier in the year we may have to go catch this Green Bay playing somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, Brant, so again, NFL draft's coming, which really means for a lot of us, our rookie drafts start tail end of this month. And so, all the speculation at this point's been who goes where, and landing spots are going to matter to jockey some of these guys at some point. But Brant, I feel like it's only right that the Fatboyz come out. We put out our version of a rookie mock draft. How we're going to do this is it's a super flex. We're just going to take turns back and forth. I did defer to you on what pick you wanted. You wanted second, so you did put the pressure on me in a super flex. But we're just going to go 2 rounds of 12 picks for our rookie draft, so 24 picks. And then we will conclude and talk about some players we left off, how that happened, and maybe why some of the picks we took, in the spot that we did. So I'm ready, Brant. If you're ready to kick this thing off, we can go ahead and get started. You tell me.
Yeah, let's get it rolling. Let's get straight into this. The pre-draft mock draft for the Fatboyz.
First one of 2025, sure to be lots more to follow. Obviously, Brant, in a super flex, quarterback's normally the first pick off the board. However, I do feel like this quarterback class is pretty mid, I guess is the best way to say it. I do think there's going to be some longevity potentially out of some of these guys that will go. But the chance to take a guy like Ashton Jeanty 101 is something that I just couldn't pass up. So that is my pick. A guy that in college caught the ball very well out of the backfield, a guy that, runs north and south well, very physical runner. And there's a lot of connections recently to him in Vegas, which you talked about, Pete Carroll getting a little bowling ball of a running back there and how good of a fit that could be. Ashton Jeanty just makes too much sense for me at the 101.
Okay, that's where I figured you'd go. That's why I deferred for the 102 and the even numbers here. I am going to take the quarterback, and I think this is really the only quarterback in this class that I feel comfortable starting day one. That might be my hot take. Maybe we'll bring up some hot takes later. But day one, I think this is the only one that's going to start, and I am taking Cam Ward out of Miami with my 102.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody there could blame you, Brant. He is going to go to a situation. It sounds like Tennessee's pretty comfortable drafting him at this point, so he is going to go into not a competition, a spot where he should be the day one starter. They've seen enough of Will Levis. It sounds like there were some rumors they may even be willing to deal him. But wherever Cam Ward goes, he's going to be a starter week one of the NFL season. And you're right. I think in a super flex, it makes too much sense. If you're drafting early in a rookie draft, it's probably because you need quarterback play to begin with. So definitely don't dislike that there. Again, I think this makes my third pick pretty obvious. I'm going to go with Tet McMillan out of Arizona. You're giving me, or not you, but at this point, you're giving me the two best players I feel in this draft position wise. I don't feel like I can pass up on Genty and then McMillan at third.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am actually going to go. I'm going to go with the running back here myself, and I'm going to go with the one that we both had at number 2. I know a lot of people have Hampton as their number 2, but I am going to go with Caleb Johnson out of Iowa with the 4th overall.
Okay. Again, Brant, landing spot dependent. I could see him being a guy that ends up being the best running back in this class. We talked about that just a couple short weeks ago. So for me, that pick is a great pick for you at 4. So I'm going to go a little off the cusp. This is another thing we talked about on the show. I'm going to rip it off like a Band-Aid, Brant. I am going to pull Travis Hunter at 5. We did decide to include him here. I think if he was solely as a wide receiver, I think he'd be really high on a lot of people's boards. But there is something intriguing about potentially getting 10, 15 plays for him as a wide receiver and then lining up in the secondary and getting some defensive points as well if your league has those settings. So I'm going to go at the 105, and I'm going to pull Travis Hunter, Brant. Kind of a risky pick there at the 105, but hey, playmakers make plays.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this play. I do like it. If you're in a DFS league where you get both sides points, I think this is the guy you're talking about at the 102 time, maybe even the 101, because he will most likely be on both sides of the ball. Maybe not the whole game, but he should be getting you points on both sides. So this is a cheat code right now. This is your help me out here. Why am I
Taysom Hill?
This is your Taysom Hill this year, a little cheat code. So you're going to tell me I could put this guy down in my on my defensive spot and still get wide receiver points? Absolutely. So I'm going to get 15 points a game from my corner when they're averaging 7. So with the 5, I'm actually going to go
6.
6. Sorry.
You get the even numbers. Remember?
I'm going to take your guy here. I'm going to take Luther Burden. I'm going to take him at the 6 overall. I like what he brings. I think he'll be a great slot receiver and where he goes. So I'm going to go with Burden here.
Yeah, and again, no argument out of me there as well, Brant. I do think Burden is the type of player that goes to the right scheme, the right fit. He's going to be electric. Definitely enjoyed watching him at Mizzou. You know how my feelings are towards Luther Burden. So that's definitely a guy I'm excited about. For a long time, I made a pretty big trade to get the 101 in our home league, and my instant reaction was I got Luther Burden. Obviously, that's cooled since. I'm not going to make that decision or make that move, but for a long time I did think he was probably the best player in this draft class. So getting him at 106 I do think is an absolute steal for you here. For me at the 107, Brant, I am going to take what I feel like could be this year's Brock Bowers. I think there's some talent at the running back position left. I think the quarterback run could start here, but Tyler Warren, I feel like, is a player coming out of Penn State that could end up, if he walks in the door in a spot where, like a Jacksonville, where they got rid of the tight end that was there. I know everybody's hyped on Brenton Strange, but if they go into some place that doesn't have a bona fide number 1, I think Warren could end up being a huge difference maker year one. And at 107, I feel like that's just too good to pass up on.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back into the running back well here. I'm going to take Omar Hampton here out of North Carolina. Yeah, I know I was getting ready to butcher his name. I'm going to take Hampton out of North Carolina. This is a guy that could be the second best back in this class. Could fin for the first. They're the best back pinning on landing spot. So I'm going to take with Hampton at the 8.
I've heard a lot of rumors of Hampton to Pittsburgh. I think that's kind of like the growing consensus, is that that's kind of the spot for him if he ends up going someplace early. And again, Najee just left, vacating that role of that big bruiser back. Obviously, you still have Warren in town, or going to be in town, but Hampton goes to Pittsburgh. I think you do see some leaps, because Mike Tomlin does get his running backs involved in the pass catching game. Does like to be that gritty, tough football team. So I think Hampton to Pittsburgh could be a great spot. I am going to revisit the quarterback well here, Brant, at the 109. I think for me, this is the spot where I think I like Shadur Sanders a little bit. I know you're not a huge Shadur fan, but he does have a really nice pocket presence. He gets the ball out pretty quickly. I could see him going to the New York Giants, pairing him with Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and that kind of smaller, faster slant, and let them do the work after the catch. And I think that's the kind of fit you dream up for Shadur Sanders, Brant. So I will take him as the second quarterback off the board. Again, there's another player I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in this draft that if he goes to a better spot with better weapons, I can see that changing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about quarterbacks. There's a team without one right now that could be leaps and bounds making this guy the best drafted quarterback with two good weapons. But we'll talk about that here shortly. My next pick, I'm going to go with that 10. I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I like this guy in the long run. I like his skill set, and I look forward to him adding to it.
Yeah, so I will be honest, Brant, here at the 111, it is tempting for me to pull Marcus Golden, the fastest man in the draft. But again, I talked about this on the wide receiver show a little bit. Not really my cup of tea. I do feel like it's kind of gimmicky. So I'm just not sold on it. I think I will go with Travion Henderson at this point, just because I feel like that running back crop is deep this year. I still think there's a couple other guys in that running back room that will have immediate impact, and I do think Henderson's one of them.
Okay, absolutely. I don't mind that at all. I'm going to go with the guy that both you and me were a little lower on, and everyone else is jumping all over. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden here. This is a guy that has home run abilities, especially if I have bonuses in my leagues for deep passes. So I'm going to go with Matthew Golden here. Okay,
so I was tempted at 11. You took him at 12. So again, just a quick refresher on the first round: Ashton Genty 1, Cam Ward 2, Tet McMillan 3, Caleb Johnson 4, Travis Hunter 5, Luther Burden 6, Tyler Warren 7, Omarion Hampton 8, Shadur Sanders 9, Emeka Egbuka at 10, Travion Henderson at 11, and at the 112, Brant, you took the speedster out of Texas. So again, at the 2-1, that puts me back onto the clock, Brant, and I feel like there's some obvious choices here, but for me in a super flex, I feel like getting Jackson Dart to fall to the 201 is too far of a slide. I feel like Jackson Dart has to be pulled here. I do think Jackson Dart is has started creeping up boards in the recent months or so here. And if we see him go in the first round to one of these teams, I think that really solidifies his spot in the at least draft pecking order when it comes to fantasy.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm gonna revisit the running backs. I absolutely love Dart. Dart's the guy that I could see in Pittsburgh. I absolutely, and I'm telling you, he probably would jump into the second quarterback off the board in my mind if he does go to Pittsburgh. So I do like Jackson Dart here. My next one is at the 202. I'm going to take Judkins out of Ohio State, the running back there. Not as good in the passing games as his teammate, but he's still going to be serviceable. I still think he'll be a day one 50-50 starter. I don't know if he'll be right out of the gate as a full-blown workhorse, but I'm going to take Judkins.
Okay, back at the 2-3, Brant, again, you're a team that's looking for, that immediate impact. This is a player that on the wide receiver episode of the show, I made a pretty decent flag plant on him. That's Jaden Higgins, a guy who I think could end up being the best wide receiver in this draft. So for me, Brant, this is a no-brainer at the second round. I thought about him a couple of times in the first, but positionally or value-wise, based on position, there was a couple of times I couldn't take him. But Jaden Higgins at the 2-3 it would be a pick that I would be very excited about.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to revisit a position that you already did, and maybe I'm going a little too high with this, but I know there's a lot of tight end needy teams out there. I'm going to go with Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. I think this is a guy that could wind up in a position where he is a starter day one and could really help me redefine my tight end role if I'm not sitting pretty with somebody. Or maybe I have Travis Kelce, who's on the back end of his career, or George Kittle. This is a guy that I think could really make a quick impact and really help me in the long run.
Yeah, and not to mention, Brant, if he ends up in Los Angeles reunited with Harbaugh, that could be a really, really interesting fit for him. So I do like Colston Lovelace quite a bit. I just have him a notch below Tyler Warren for me. But yeah, I definitely think this is a guy that's going to have a lot of fantasy value for many years to come at the tight end position. So back at the 2-5 for me, Brant, and my opinion, my eyes, there's one more quarterback that I feel has some value as early as the second round. This is a guy that I think suffers a little bit from people being burned by a one Anthony Richardson. But I am going to pull Jalen Milroe from the University of Alabama here. He does have a big arm, super, super elusive when he takes off and runs. Definitely a guy that I think had the whole Anthony Richardson at 4 to the Colts not been such a complete disaster. You could have seen him go higher. But anytime you get a guy who rushes the way Jalen Milroe does at the quarterback position, it's going to bring fantasy relevancy. As you like to call it, and a lot of others in the industry do, it's that Konami code. And so you're almost double dipping at the quarterback. You know very well in our home league, you've had Jalen Hurts for some time now, and that's been something that you've really enjoyed. And so I think if there's a chance this late in the draft to pick up somebody as dynamic as Jalen Milroe, it's got to take place.
Okay, absolutely. I don't mind that pick at all. I'm going to jump, and I did the wide receiver rankings last week, and I'm actually going to jump away from my rankings a little bit because I'm going to go with the guy. In my rankings, I had a few guys that I think may take a little bit to make it in the NFL, but I'm going to go with the guy that I think can make an immediate impact. I'm going to go with Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I like his size, his skill set. A lot of guys are looking for X wide receivers, and I think Trey Harris could be that guy with the right fit. So that's who I'm going to go with.
Yeah, again, I'm staying with the wide receiver position as well, Brant. I did like Trey Harris here. If you would have skipped him, that would have been my pick. However, I will say this, in the ranking show, I talked a lot about both the Iowa State wide receivers, and I did say I thought Noel could be special. That is going to be my pick now. I think Jalen Noel, again, is the type of guy, if he slides someplace where he can have that Waddle role on a team, I think you could see him be hyper successful, especially early. I think there's a chance that you could see him have like a Ladd McConkey-esque season in year one where he's just an absolute target monster, not necessarily, making tons of touchdowns, but the targets and the yak yards that he could accrue, I think would be huge. And again, in the second round, Brant, we're still drafting players that we want to get some immediate impact out of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm going to go with the guy that I think is a future pick here, just because I do want to make sure I get him in and I feel comfortable with my other picks so far. I'm going to go with Jack Beck out of TCU. They're at the 208. I do think this guy may take a little bit to get into the NFL, but that drop rate at 1.6 it is too good to really overlook. So I'm going to go with Jack Beck over here.
So again, Brant, we're coming to the end of the second round here. There's only 4 picks left, which means I only get 2 myself. There's a player that I told you that if I was in a spot to take him in any real draft, I don't know how I would pass up on him. It's a guy that I think, and I will say this, and I even sent it to you, an article, Brant. I planted the flag on this guy potentially being this year's Bucky Irving, and then I see it on Twitter a couple of different times a couple of weeks later. I am taking R.J. Harvey out of the University of Central Florida here. This is a guy that I think if he's got a chance to step in and have any kind of role in a running back room, early, he's going to make a lot of people very, very, very happy in this year's draft. Very loose hips, very quick feet, just a guy with unbelievable cuts, unbelievable notion to find the end zone. I like RJ Harvey an awful lot in this class. And if he went to an SEC school or potentially a bigger school, I think this is a player that you could see fly off the boards. But because he went to the University of Central Florida, he suffers a little bit from the unknown, I guess, Brant.
Okay, absolutely. I don't know a whole lot about him. I'm still diving into some of my running backs and everything here. I start at the top, which is not normal for me. Normally, I start to look at the unknowns early, but I kind of start at the top this year. But with my next pick here, I'm going to go with a guy that I really like. He's a wide receiver. I had him as number 5. You didn't even have him on your list. That's going to be Alec Aomanor out of Stanford. I had it last week.
You're a little out of practice.
But I'm going to take him. That big body, being only 21 years old, could really grow into the NFL. So I actually like Alec here.
Okay. For my last pick, in the second round, I am going to stay at that wide receiver position. I am going to take Isaiah Bond out of Texas. This is a guy that, again, coming into the season, I think would have been the number 1 from Texas, had the speed not been brought to the forefront with Matthew Golden. But Bond is a guy that I think, his pedigree is right. He had some success at Alabama before he went to Texas. And this is just a guy that I think translates early to the NFL. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a stud. I don't think he's ever going to have a chance to be a top 15 wide receiver in the National Football League. However, I do think he will have a solid career and will get you some fantasy points, maybe a flex appeal type of player down the stretch, Brant.
Okay, absolutely. I don't hate that at all. So this last pick I am torn on. It's 2 guys that I really do like going. I'm going to go with the wide receiver that I'm going to go with, and that's Jalen Royals out of Utah State. That's where I'm going to go with with my last pick there. I'm going to go with Royals. I was torn between him and Scatabo. Something tells me that Scatabo is going to wind up with Pete, and I'm probably going to fall in love with this guy and then miss him and then try to overtrade for him, kind of like a guy that we work with overtrades for Bucks players. But I'm going to go with Jalen Royals here.
Okay. All right. No disrespect or anything to Cam Scatabo. I understand, you have love for him. So again, quick recap on the second round: Jackson Dart at the 2-1, Judkins at the 2-2, Higgins at the 2-3, Loveland, the tight end, at the 2-4. Last quarterback taken in the first 2 rounds for you and I is Jalen Milroe at the 5, Trey Harris the 6, Noel at the 7, Beck at the 8, RJ Harvey at the 9, Aomanor at the 10, Bond at the 11, and Royals at the 12, Brant. So some notable players that didn't get drafted here, is Devin Neal out of the University of Kansas, Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State, Quinn Ewers, quarterback out of Texas, Dylan Sampson out of the University of Tennessee. Lots of names here, Brant. At the wide receiver position, I think really these last kind of guys are going to be preference, the ones that we didn't take. But anybody that stuck out to you that was like, man, I wish I could go back and find a way to get that player into my first 2 rounds somehow.
Dylan Sampson, you hit one of the names. I do like Dylan Sampson. I could find a way to try to get him in there. Another name that you did miss that I think could end up making some noise, depending on where he's drafted, is Trevor Etienne. Depending on where he goes, a lot of people, were so high on Travis and everything else. And I think Trevor could bring the same type of skill set there. He is a little bit smaller at 198, but I still think those 2 running backs are guys that you're going to probably see pending landing spot that could easily sneak into these top 12.
And again, I think this top 12 or the top 24 where we have it right now is going to look vastly different at the end of April after we've completed the NFL draft, because we will have some players that were shocking, or we'll have some late round wide receivers that go to spots where we thought maybe they'd address wide receiver earlier in the draft. And then there's some value for some of these names they're a little bit later. For those of you at home, I'd love to know who you guys think we should have had on the top 24, who we didn't, or people, if there's somebody in the top 24 that you're like, hey, I don't think that guy would have been in there for me, which I kind of wonder, Brant, if I didn't take him at the 2.5, was Jalen Milroe in your top 24 at all?
Jalen Milroe was not. There's only probably those top three quarterbacks, and you already know I'm not a big Sanders believer, so he probably would have been at the 205 for me. Dart, Ward, and Sanders are really the only three ones that I think would be day one starters. The rest, I think I'm sitting on the back burner, landing spot dependent. If you're going to, Pittsburgh where there's no quarterback, I'm probably going to put you in the top 2 rounds because you're probably starting day one. The Giants, who don't have, a solidified quarterback after this year, I think they're both on 1-year deals. Cleveland Browns are another one. Landing spot, but Milroe was not on my radar.
Okay. All right. And then the last thing I kind of want to talk about, and then I'll leave the floor to you, Brant. 101. Is there a case this year in your mind for Cam Ward to go 101? I know obviously you took him over McMillan, so I think that kind of shuts the door on whether or not you take McMillan 1 at him. But for you, is there a way you could see yourself take Cam Ward over Ginty, or is it one of those things that it's like, hey, if I need a quarterback and I'm sitting at 1, I will trade back and let somebody else come get Ginty because that should be the clear number 1. Let somebody pay me a little bit more and slide back and get a quarterback, or is it like, hey, it's close enough for me that if I need the quarterback, I'm going to take Ward and just let it be what it is?
No, it's not, because Ward doesn't really have that Konami code as we talked about. He will rush if need be, but he's not going to go out there. There's not designed rush plays for him. So, no, I don't think I could get him. I think I would, honestly, if in my mind, I'm taking Ginty. I'm not even going to try to slide back for Cam. I'm going to take Ginty and see what haul of other quarterbacks might come my way in a super flex. Because if not, I still think I have the best player in this draft right now in Ginty. So I don't think there's a way. And honestly, I think you have to pull Ginty and just either A, see what haul comes your way, or B, live with Ginty, which isn't a bad thing.
No, and you're right. It's really not a bad thing. I don't think there's a world in which Ginty is a consolation prize. I do think he is that good at football. Which, of course, there's been guys that can't miss out of college that miss all the time, Brant, with it. This is one of those things you and I have had numerous heated debates about back and forth and away from the camera. But we both do get very passionate about our sports takes. So it's only natural that does take place. But, yeah, I just think that Ginty, what he brings to the table is so dynamic. I think it's the one – and the quarterback class is also weak. Mind you, this reminds me a lot of the Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder quarterback draft class that was just putrid where, Kenny Pickett, where we all looked at that draft class and said, oh, there's going to be 10 quarterbacks taken in the first round, and it was Kenny Pickett, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And then, come to fantasy-wise, it was not good with the rest of them. So I do think this quarterback class is a little bit better than that, obviously, I will say. But I just feel like the positional scarcity is there enough that it'll make some people reach for quarterback, but I'm not in love with this quarterback class, Brant.
Yeah, I think the argument's closer to Tet jumping over Cam than it is Cam jumping over Ginty in this class. I don't feel comfortable. Really, you go into, if he gets drafted by the Titans, he's going in with who's there?
Ridley's still there, and Burks is there. It's not great.
Could have swore they just signed one too, but it's eluding me right now. But still, there's no running back in that room that I can think of off the top of my head. That really would help open that up. So even Tennessee now the one that would really move up my board is that somehow Cam, any quarterback that ends up in Pittsburgh with DK, Pickens, and possibly one of these top 3 running backs is really going to really shake it up a little bit for me, because Tomlin's going to win 9 games next year. Regardless, he could start at quarterback and somehow he'll win 9 games. So he's going over 500. Excuse me. So that's going to make me want to put a quarterback up there. Even if Rodgers does end up signing there, I still think that the quarterback in Pittsburgh is going to be a guy to talk about. Now, we did see them miss on Kenny Pickett pretty wild swing there. The one that really shocked me is with your draft here, and it didn't shock me because he was there at the bottom of my first round, was Warren. You pulling him right there. I guess you did really at the 7. So I guess you were near the bottom, but in my mind, that's more of the middle. I was looking at him at like the 10, 12 range. So you pulling him that early, kind of like, okay, you threw me off just a little bit. But I don't hate the pick. I just don't think that they're obviously you're not getting a Brock Bowers situation. And I think both of these tight ends are going to be guys that you may have to sit and wait a week or two to see what their real role is. That was just the one that really shocked me. And it didn't shock me, but it was like maybe you're a little higher than I was on him.
And I will too say, Brant, it doesn't have to be a Brock Bowers situation for that to be good at the 107. If you think back to the year prior, Dalton Kincaid had a really good rookie year. So did Sam Laporta. So we're kind of seeing this train where we have these tight ends step in and they're able to perform and produce year one, kind of without skipping a beat. So, and realistically, last year you got Brock Bowers at the 104, and honestly, he probably could have been the 101 in last year's draft class. So I do think the tight end relevancy is kind of there, and it is the Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers effect for me. Trey McBride, these young tight ends that, again, if it's very similar to the quarterback position. If you have a Josh Allen, a Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, you're already night and day ahead of the competition when you go in week to week. I think the same is true of having a Brock Bowers, a Trey McBride, a Kelsey from 2 years ago. I think that does honestly make a big difference versus playing the guessing game at the tight end position. And there is a lot of tight ends in the league that you're playing the guessing game with now. Dalton Kincaid, Cole Kmet, the Cade Otton. The list goes on. These are good wide or tight ends, Brant. They're just not the consistent 15-point guy you get from some of these other names. So, again, for me, that was kind of the reason I looked at Warren as early as I did, is I think that when you start getting into those back half first-round picks, they're going to be owned by teams that are like right there, that are a piece or two away, and maybe tight end is that team's weakness.
Okay. All right. Absolutely.
I do have one thing I got to get out here before we call it quits on this episode, Brant. I told my wife that I would do this if she let me record tonight. I told her I would give her a shout out for her birthday today. That was the only way she was okay with me recording and keeping our normal schedule, since I had previously planned on not doing one tonight. So happy birthday, honey. Happy 31st. Just wanted to make sure I got that out there. Didn't get in trouble when I got off of here. So
happy birthday, Kayla. I didn't post on your Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook guy. The only thing I really post is our podcast out there. Happy birthday, Kayla. Hope Bo made it at least semi-enjoyable. I know you had to deal with him all day, so I don't know how you felt about that. Maybe he should have came to work.
I think that was said several times today, actually.
But I think that's about all I got. Now, I want to put one more thing in. I kind of alluded to this earlier. When you talk about the 101, the only way that I could probably consider somebody else is the Travis Hunter effect if you are in a DFS league. And that is something that you and me can discuss later on after we figure out maybe where he's at and what's he going or who drafts him. But I think that might be the only other name that I could possibly consider at the 101.
That's fair. I got nothing else to say against that, Brant. That's fair. In a DFS lineup, actually, it makes quite a bit of sense. You put a guy who's got a cornerback designation and wide receiver value in that spot. It's almost a roster cheat code. So definitely no problems with that on my end.
But I think that does it for us. So as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.